Good day, everybody. This is Chris G here, Hard Hat CEO, and I've got a treat in today. We talked about the fact, I talk about it being a hard hat CEO, and sometimes it just don't get through. And sometimes if you listen to other people talk about it, it does resonate. So I've got a good friend here, Brad Huebner. He is the podcast man of Hammer and Grind, and he's going to talk to us today. And before I get started, I wanted to thank him. He's a former Marine. Thank you for your service, Brad. But can you go a little further into what you do and how you got here?
Yeah. So I in high school I did I took architectural drawing, which was like a T&I. They called it a T&I class back then. It was like a 3-hour class. And so my senior year I did that. And I thought I was going to be an architect. But it turns out you have to actually have good grades to get into college.
What?
So I thought, well, the next best thing to do is go into the Marines, right? So I did that. Did 4 years in the Marine Corps, and then I got out. But and then tried a couple different things, and then found myself back into construction as a superintendent. And then I worked for a carpenter, and then I started my own business. So it's kind of like a full circle. Get into the construction, leave it, and then come back kind of experience.
What I found in college was I only cared about if I had money to pay them, and they just cared about my grades. But anyway, so you talk about getting out of the grind and swinging that hammer like we do. What caused you to get to that mindset?
Well, I'm like the poster child for what not to do in your construction business, right?
Yeah.
So for almost 9 years in my business, I struggled, like didn't do the right things. I mean, it wasn't like I was broke and poor all the time, but I mean, I was struggling. I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I would hire people and then have to, then I'd fire them 3 months later and have to go back on the tools. And it was just like this transition of trying to go from being on the tools to off the tools was a difficult journey. And it wasn't until after 9 years, I finally decided, I was like, something's not right with me. Like, it's not the business model, right? Because if it was the business model, everyone would have the same problem. And there's lots of people that don't have this problem. So that I must be doing something wrong. And so then I started seeking out counsel and coaching. I hired a business coach, went through some courses, learned a bunch of stuff. And it was through there I realized what I was doing wrong. And the majority of it was, I just wasn't charging enough. Like, I didn't know. It wasn't that I was trying to be the lowest price. It's that I just didn't realize how much you actually needed to charge to have a profitable business so that you can actually reinvest in your business, right? And so it was just through that whole process of struggling that I finally decided to get help. And then through that getting help, that's what changed everything for me. And also through the process of getting coaching, I kind of fell in love with the idea of coaching. And so that kind of prepped me for a few years later being able to do coaching myself.
I want to give you regards. You do a lot of handyman stuff, high-end handyman and remodeling. Is that right? What you focused on?
Yeah. I don't have the business anymore. But yeah, for 12 years or almost 12 years, that's what we did. I started out doing handyman because that was the easiest thing to get into.
Oh, yeah.
Like, with low money and stuff. And then we started doing remodeling. Mostly bathroom remodels is what we focused on.
Now, I've talked about raising the prices, and we're not going to get into that necessarily, but when you did that, did you find it that a lot of guys are nervous? Did you find you just had a different type of client, or did you just find that, or it wasn't as bad as you thought it was, and you just perceived that being cheaper was better?
Well, again, I wasn't like trying to be cheaper. I just didn't realize that I wasn't charging that, right? And so it's funny. I still remember this to this day. So when I started my business, I was working for a contractor, and we were doing remodeling. Actually, we were a finished carpenter, but this was in 2009, right after the housing market crash. So we trimmed out one house, and then there were no more houses to trim out. So then we switched over to remodeling, right?
Yep.
And so when I was working for him, he was charging his clients like $40 an hour for our labor. So I said, well, I'm going to charge $40 an hour because that's what he charged. And I remember when I told my dad that I was going to do this and I was going to charge $40 an hour, he said, you can't do that. You're ripping people off. Now my dad's very cheap. He's a very, very, very frugal, cheap person, right?
And back in 2009, $40 was pretty
It
high.
wasn't cheap, but I
Yeah,
mean, it
but it wasn't
was
crazy
not,
either. But
it wasn't
still, it
crazy
was.
either, right? So I remember after like a few years, I'm like, I have to raise my prices. So I was going to go to $50 an hour. That was my goal. And I remember going to this client, and this was a bunch of handyman stuff, bunch of honey-do list stuff. And so typically I would charge by the hour for like the
Mhm.
honey-do list stuff. And I remember I'm like, this is the client, I'm going to charge $50. I'm going to raise my price.
Yeah.
And I look at the job and I go to him and he says, okay, well, how much is it going to cost? And I say, well, I charge by the hour and I charge $50 an hour. And I'm sure I was like, wait, like, I charge $50 an hour. Like, is that okay? Kind of, and he goes, well, I don't have a problem with that. Like, that was it. And it just
That's it.
broke my mentality in that moment. He's like, I don't care. That's fine.
Did you ever make the transition from hourly to job?
Oh yeah. That was so
Was
I
that
basically
easy for you?
Yeah, it was. I basically did. I still kept the handyman stuff, so I kind of ran like two different divisions, if you will. I mean, anytime we would do like handyman stuff, we would still do it by the hour. But if it was like a project, then we would bid it, and it would be a fixed price thing.
At what point did you start expanding your team and not doing some of the stuff yourself?
Well, like I was saying, I would hire people and get off the tools, and then that, a year later they would quit, and then I have to go back on the tools. So that happened for many, many years. It wasn't really until like around 7, 8, 9 year mark of being in business where I started being able to actually build a team and get off the tools. For the most part, not have to go back on. Occasionally someone would be sick and you got to run out there and
Sure.
fill in or whatever. But
And that happens. But
yeah, as far as being on it every day, I mean, it took me quite a bit, and that's really because I just didn't know. It's funny because in the military, when you're a leader, everyone underneath you, your subordinates, have to follow you because they're going to get in trouble if they don't.
Yeah,
right?
that's
Well, in
right.
the civilian world, they don't have to follow you. And so, like for me, the leadership style of that, it took me a while to like understand that, okay, I can't make people do what I want them to do. I can't force them to do what I want to do. So I had to like learn how to change my leadership style. And that took a little bit of time as well. I mean, I was always a good boss. I never had anyone quit and say like, oh, you're a terrible boss. I had many people that would leave for, different reasons, better opportunities, change careers. And they would always say like, oh, I really enjoyed working here. You're a great boss. But it was always a struggle for me to understand how to be a leader and not just expect people to do what I tell them to do because they work for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're coaching today. What do you tell your clients, or how to keep those? I don't want to say loyalty, but how do you keep longer people better? Better people, and how you keep them longer?
As far as employees go,
Yeah,
this is a great question. So it really begins with hiring the right people. You got to hire A players. And again, this took me a long time to understand. But if you hire A players, most of your problems don't exist. You know what I mean? So like if you're hiring B and C players, you're dealing with, showing up late. I can't work today because I drank too much on the weekend, and like all of these, personal issues that you deal with. When you hire B and C players, that's what you're dealing with. So you spend most of your time, quote, babysitting them and trying to get them to just do the basic stuff. So if you learn how to hire A players, which by the way requires you to pay more, right? No A player is going to come work for cheap. And so because of that, you have to learn how to charge more, right? You have to learn how to provide more value. So there's all these things are connected in your business. And that's why my tagline or motto, whatever, is profit is not a dirty word. And that's because you have to have a profitable business if you want anything else in your business to work.
Absolutely. I was going to say, well, Brad, I can't afford A players. You can't afford not to, really. It's going to cost you in the long run, whether you see it or not, until it's too late. In some cases.
The thing about, I agree with you. The thing about A players is like, it's not when you jump from like a B player to an A player, it's not like a 1-step jump. It's like a 10-step jump, right? So like an A player will pay for themselves. Like they will definitely pay for themselves because their production, their reliability, their dedication, all that stuff is going to be at the top level. And I mean, I would guess that probably about 75% of contractors have never experienced hiring an A player. And so they don't understand what the difference is. It's a significant difference in jump of
What it is once you decide
but
to do it. And
yeah,
I agree. It's scary. I've done it myself. I've had those players that don't show up, don't drink, or, all that stuff you mentioned. And then, so I hired a coach as well, like you. And then he said, you got to do this. I said,
yeah.
okay. So I just took the leap of faith, and I'm knock on wood, I've been very fortunate. And sometimes you can get a bad A player. They're good A players, but they're not a good mix for your team too. So it's important to hire the right A player, not only just an A player.
Yeah, sometimes you can have the wrong person in the right position, or you can have the right person in the wrong position.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I hear all the time. I follow. I'm on TikTok, and I follow a lot of contractors on TikTok. And I heard someone the other day talking about hiring, and he's like, what's the number one quality you look for when you hire someone? And he was going on to explain that, I want to look for someone, if I'm hiring them, that's going to be leadership potential. Well, I would say that's actually the wrong way to go about it, because not everybody wants to be a leader. Like some people just want to be the craftsman. They just want to show up and
Do
work,
their job and go home, and
do their job and go home. And so like, if you're always hiring because you want to just make you want to promote everyone, that can be a recipe for disaster. And you can see that in corporate America, especially in sales, because you have a corporate America where they have a sales team and you got a sales manager, and you have one salesman that just is a rock star. Like he's just outselling everyone. Yep. What do they want to do with that person? That rock star salesman. What do they want to
move
do?
him up right away.
They want to promote him to a manager.
He must be able to teach everybody else.
Exactly. And then they get in that position and they fail miserably.
And they quit selling because they got other responsibilities.
And they end up leaving, or they get fired.
They're not happy. Yeah.
So you basically just ruined your best salesman because you try to make him a leader, and that's not what he wants to do or what he's designed to do. So that happens in construction as well. Like, I mean, you have a foreman, a working foreman, that's a little bit different. They got to be able to work on the tools and lead the job. But if you start getting into like a supervisor, superintendent, project manager, that's an entirely different skill set. Right? Managing and controlling schedules is totally different than swinging a hammer. So you could be the best carpenter on earth and be a terrible project manager. And you can also be the worst carpenter on earth and be the best project manager out there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So matching skill sets and matching personalities and all that stuff to the position is very important in your business.
Before I go into my next question, I'll talk my listeners aren't always contractors, they're business owners, entrepreneurs. And this has to do with any business. It's the same game we talk about. It's just different players. And all this stuff we're talking about pertains to you too. So just don't hang up because we're talking about swinging a hammer. It has to do with any job that you're doing, whether it goes from mowing a yard to in the corporate life. I mean, people don't always see it that way, and hopefully some corporate people are listening, but that's the truth, what we're talking about. You mentioned hiring. Well, we hired A people, and you got to increase your sales. You got to increase your profits to afford those A players. Have you changed your sales process to incorporate that higher margins?
Yeah, absolutely. That's basically the fundamental of what I teach. So one of the things I learned, when I and this is funny because I see this all the time, and I'm not ashamed to say this, but 9 years in, I didn't know the difference between a margin and markup. Like I didn't realize that there was a difference, right? And so when I was going with this coach, and he was saying like, you need to charge more money, you need to shoot for like a 50% gross profit margin. That's the goal. And I'm like, well, yeah, I do a 50% markup. And it's like, no, that's not
it's not the same.
It's not the same, right?
For my listeners who don't understand that, can you explain what the difference is real quick?
Yeah, well, I mean, your markup is how much you actually mark up your materials. And then your gross profit margin is what's left over after you subtract your COGS, of the cost of the goods. So in order to get a 50% gross profit margin, you have to do 100% markup, right? So like that means if your labor is $1,000 and your materials are $1,000, you got $2,000 in COGS. then you have to sell that job for $4,000, double what it cost you. And I start telling people that, they're like, Brad, there's no way. There's no way I can charge that. My competitors are half that. I'll never get jobs. I'll go out of business. And that's some of the limiting beliefs that go around. But this is where you're right. If you just tell people you charge that much and then you don't understand how to provide value, you don't understand how to sell, then yes, you're going to fail. That's why the sales process is so important, right? So then when we start learning how to sell, then we can start demanding higher margins. And it doesn't take very long. Once you start selling jobs and getting a 50% or better, maybe at a minimum 40%, but that would be like the low end of gross profit. But once you start getting around that 50%, your business changes because now you have lots of money, capital available to start hiring the better employees, to start investing in business capital, buying equipment, spending money on marketing, all of this stuff, building a website. When you have money, you can solve problems in your business.
Okay. So if you are increasing your profits and you want to, and your margins, obviously, to get those higher profits, are you selling to a different type of client? Where you're marketing and you're doing your branding, are you now changing your avatar, the person you're actually trying to reach that can afford those higher margins?
Yeah, you are. You're going to isolate some of the lower level, the lower tier wealth class, or whatever you want to call it, social class. So yeah, you are targeting a little bit higher, net worth people. But it's not like you have to go to like the uber rich people. Middle America, middle income people will still pay those kinds of prices.
And we're not trying to, again, it's more about the value than trying to just get more sales. You got to trade, and you're trading that off, and that's a whole other conversation, obviously, but we're trading some more money for value that doesn't cost you as much as hard cost. And that's a different thing. This kind of goes into our next question of overcoming the scarcity mindset. Do people think when they say, I can't raise my price, I'm going out of business? Is that a scarcity mindset, or is that just the fact that they just don't realize what's out there to achieve, or don't have the goals, or what do you think?
I think it comes from a scarcity mindset, but I think they also were never taught any different. You know what I mean? Who doesn't want to be able to raise their price? You know what I mean? If I could charge $1 million an hour for coaching, that would be great, right? but
they don't teach it at all.
I don't need to charge like $10 an hour, right? Because that wouldn't be worth my time. And so I think everyone intuitively says, I wish I could charge more, right? I wish I could charge more. Well, the reality of it is you can charge more. You were never taught how to be able to do that. And so it's a scarcity mindset, generally from a lack of knowledge, right? Not knowing. And I'm sure sometimes people will they'll try. They're like, okay, I hear you, Brad. I'm going to raise my prices. And they go out on the next job and they raise their prices by 10%, and they don't get the job. And they go, see, I tried it and it didn't work. And it's like, you tried it one time. You know what I mean? Go out there and try it 100 times and then tell me if it doesn't work. And so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, I just know better, even though they've never actually tried it mentality.
There are other ways than just raising your prices and while it's important to raise your prices, make sure you're in the market, even be above the market, as long as you're providing the value. But you can also look at I've talked about guys who increase their sales, but even my old company, and back in the day, we had all kinds of sales, but we lost money. Yeah. We had chaos. We were managing chaos. And talk about that, how you control and either create systems or organize the company where it can be more profitable, even at the sales level they're at now.
Well, there's a lie out there. I call it the big lie. And that is that the way you make money in construction is by being more efficient. And this was the lie that I believe. So, I can't tell you how much money I spent on tools and gimmick things that are I see some tool that's going to save you an hour and I go buy it and it's junk or whatever. I spent a lot of money on tools because I thought, my mindset was everyone relatively charges the same. And so the only way you're going to really make money is by being super efficient. Right. And so I took some of the military experience, because in the military, like everything has a place. Everything is like tools go into
Oh,
Kaizen foam, and
yeah,
like
absolutely.
everything is systematized, right?
Everybody has a place and for
Yeah.
that place, and yep.
There's a plan for everything, and a contingency plan, and a contingency plan for that contingency plan. So like that was my mindset, is like I just got to be super efficient. And so I spent a lot of energy trying to be efficient. But what I learned is, like, if I just charged $5,000 more on a job, I actually don't have to be that efficient. You know what I mean? Because
That much more efficient. No,
right, because
it's the same
here's the
job you
thing.
already have.
If I had two contractors and they're both bidding a job for, like, say $20,000, and the contractor A is going to charge $20,000, but he has a super efficient business, and so through efficiencies, he's able to save like $1,000 of production time and overhead and everything, right?
Sure.
He's saving $1,000. Great, give me an extra 1,000. But contractor B says, well, if I charge $25,000 for that job, I don't have to be efficient at all. I
And
can
make
actually
more money.
I can be less efficient. I could be $1,000 less efficient, and guess what? I still make $4,000 or $3,000 more than you, who are super efficient. So it's so much easier to charge more than trying to be efficient or try to increase numbers. And what a lot of contractors get trapped in is,
Mhm.
like I was doing, when I was charging $40 an hour, the only way I could make more money would be to hire more guys and charge $40 an hour, where I'm only making like maybe $10 an hour profit off of them, low profit margins. And
Right.
so now I got to have like 20 people. So now you got to make money through volume. Right.
Exactly.
And so a lot of contractors they'll have a team, they'll have 2 guys, 3 guys, 4 guys, 2 crews, and they're stuck at their profit margins and their profitability. And they think the only way I can make more money is to expand, is
Mhm.
hire more people. That's the only way.
That's the only thing they
And
think of.
right.
Yeah.
And they don't have systems. They don't have processes in their business. And so my favorite term on this is, like, if you have a turd business now, in other words, like your business is chaos, it's
Yeah.
a big turd, and you scale that, it doesn't make your business better. You just have a bigger pile of crap of a
Bigger
business.
turd. That's right.
You have a bigger turd you have to deal with.
Okay. So I'm a client of yours, and well, Brad, you want me to charge $5,000 more, and what's my argument to the client that balked and said they got a bid for 20? How do I
Yeah.
overcome that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the thing is, like, it's value is in the eye of the beholder, right? We call it perceived value. So the value is what the customer believes is what it's worth,
Mhm.
right? The thing is that most customers don't really know what construction cost. They can get 3 estimates, and one's 15, one's 18, one's 22 or whatever, and they can kind of pick what they think. But most people don't use price as number one. Like, it's usually about number 3 on the list of.
Now, just so we're clear, some customers do, and
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
but there's always different types of customers.
Correct. And
Yeah.
the customers that only care about price are not your customers,
Heck no.
right? So we can kind of eliminate the people that only care about price. So now we're talking
Mhm.
about, okay, I have people that are willing to pay more, but how do I show more value? Like, how do I justify, even though we don't justify, but how do I justify my price? Well, it's in your branding, it's in your marketing, it's in your process, it's in your sales, it's all of that combined. It's not really like we've been in business for 20 years, therefore we're more valuable. That's not really valuable. When you're in sales, what people care about is themselves, right? They don't care about you, the contractor.
No.
So when we do sales, we're talking about emotional selling or
Mhm.
consultative selling. And so if you go through the sales process, which is what I teach my clients, is that you have to figure out, and we have questions that we ask. We have a process we go through. We're trying to figure out what's really important to this client, and then we tap into that emotion, and then we're selling them on the emotion. We're not selling them on a price. So what a lot of what a lot of contractors do is they're order takers. They just take orders. So what does that mean? Well, if we go to McDonald's and we order a Big Mac, fry, and a Coke, and they say, well, it's going to be $12.49, they took our order. We told them what we wanted. They took our order, right? That cashier doesn't care if I like Big Macs. They don't care if I like lettuce or tomatoes or whatever, right? They're just taking your order. When you go out and meet with the client and they go, I want a deck, I want a 10 by 20 deck, this, and this, and you're like, okay, and then you take down all of their stuff they want, and then you give them a price. All you've done is taken their order.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't given them any value. You haven't sold them anything. You haven't actually done any selling. And so once you learn how to actually sell, now you're using emotions. It's a psychology. Now you're actually getting people to sell themselves on you. That's the difference. It's not a, well, we've been in business for 20 years and we have all these awards and, we're the best. And, look
They
at
don't
me.
care about you. Yeah.
That's all ego stuff, right? That makes you feel good at night. Your clients don't care about that. Your clients care about what we call a certainty of achievement. How certain am I if I hire you that I'm going to achieve the results I'm looking for? Right? And it doesn't come down to a price. If I gave you 3 numbers on a piece of paper, Chris, and I said, pick the one that's going to give you the best experience and best outcome. Just 3 numbers. You didn't talk to anyone. I just gave you 3 numbers, 3 prices. How you wouldn't have any idea. You wouldn't know if the 16,000, 18,000, or 22,000 is going to give you the best experience and price.
No,
because it's just a number. So it's not about the number. It's about how you talk to them and how you make them feel in the process. And the difference is, I'll end with this, is like the difference is, if you talk to my client, if a client talks to my clients, it's a night and day difference in the experience and the process than if they just talk to a normal contractor that says, yeah, I'll stop by there 6 p.m. when I get done with work and I'll give you an estimate. That's not selling.
No.
That's just order taking.
Order taking.
That's just giving an estimate, right? So sales is an actual skill you have to develop.
I'm part of a mastermind group, and we were talking about actually the sales part. And I said, I'm not worried about the sales part. If I get them in the door, I'm closing 80%. But the important part is get those right people coming in that door. And we talk about, even with my people that I coach, if you're doing the right branding, right marketing, they've already made a decision to use you. The sales process is just confirming what they already believe. And they're like, yeah, I made the right decision. Or do you even talk to you guys? I'm sure you do, but do you go into marketing and branding much?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you have strong branding and marketing, it makes your sales 10 times easier, no doubt. Right. I agree with you 100%. If you have a great website, blog posts, educational pieces, all this stuff, then people are going to want to hire you. And then to say, like, it's basically at your point, it's your job to lose, because you do something stupid. Right. So I agree with you. Marketing and branding is super important. You can still sell jobs if you don't have good branding or marketing, but it's more difficult, right? Now you have to be really good at sales, but you can be mediocre at sales if you have strong branding and marketing in place.
And the best part, it lets you be picky too, almost, if you do it right. You're going to identify those people that, talk about the cheap ones. You're going to know if they're wanting price or not. And they're not your client. Why waste your time on those that are wanting to beat you up on numbers? And they're going to be the most pain in the ass when it comes to being a client. If you did sell them,
that's right.
Get the people that want to work with you, that you can work with them, and have some common sense at the end of the day. They understand problems happen if you have them. I mean, and we're going to have problems with contractors or any business for that matter.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you go ahead.
One of my sales pitches was back in the day is like, we're going to have a problem and everybody else is going to have a problem too. It's how we deal with those problems that sets us apart. And I truly believe that.
That's something that we teach. Like, you should always, if you sell a job with someone and you go to like collect the deposit or sign the contract or have your first meeting with them, we call it vanguarding. Like, you should vanguard the fact that you're going to have a problem. And so this is a simple how to set expectations. You're like, hey, Chris, now when we get into this project, almost always something happens. And
it's going to rain.
Yeah. You're going to get a call from me one day and I'm going to be like, Chris, it happened. We ran into this problem. And I just want you to know, like, that's going to happen. That's just construction and the nature. And so just be prepared that you're probably going to get a call. If you don't get a call from me, great. We got lucky and everything went. So if you set that expectation in the very beginning, 3 months into the project or whatever, 3 weeks, you call and I say, Chris, remember when I said we were going to run into a problem?
Hello.
Like, you're already expecting it, right?
Mm-hmm.
you're like, okay, yeah, what happened? Like I've already like softened the blow, if you will, that this
Yep.
is going to happen. So I would encourage everyone to always set that expectation in the very beginning of the project. It
And
just
being
helps you out later on.
being a good salesman, good business person, you already know that you have a solution for that problem too, unless it's really out of the ballpark. But we kind of anticipate those type of things. We have a plan for it, and most
Yeah.
people are happy as long as they know it's being dealt with, and here's what we're going to do to make it right or fix it or move forward. Talking about rain, somebody at some point it's going to rain.
Yeah.
It's going to, nobody can work during the rain or it's too muddy. You can't get equipment in. They understand that as long as you're prepping them for it. They might not think about it at the time they're signing their contract, but you just kind of prep them for it, like you said, and soften that blow when it comes.
Yeah. One thing I learned too, this is kind of, I learned this in as far as estimating, and this is another reason why you need to charge more. You know, a lot of times we do bathroom models, and probably 80% of the time we rip up the floor around the toilet and the subfloor's rotted because the
Yep.
toilet's been leaking, right?
Sure.
And so we would have to go to a change order. Hey, client, we ran into this problem. It's going to be, you know, $300, fix it, whatever. I just said, you know what? I'm just going to add $300 to my estimate and just figure on it being, I'm going to have to do that anyways.
I'm glad you. We do what I call contingency, because I hate we do a design build where the price is the price. I
Yep.
don't want to nickel and dime you, and we do
Same.
a contingency, and because there's just some things I don't want to have to call them about. Just go on. I planned for something happening that I missed, and it makes them a lot. They don't know it, I guess, but they know that we're not calling them too. Now there's some things where, like you said, people just change their mind. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, hey, we gotta
That's a change order. For
yeah,
sure.
we gotta do a change order, make plan for this. But most part, I tell them, if you don't, that's why we plan up front. We do all these questions. I have a whole questionnaire, and I had one last night, and we were going through it. I said, the reason I'm doing this is so that when the time comes, I don't have to ask you, and you already made that decision. And we must move forward. It's more, and I'm talking about efficiency. I do love efficiency, but we can talk about that whole concept different. We all want to be efficient, and that's what you're talking about for the purpose of the sell price.
Right.
I'm talking about being efficient just to be efficient, to do more with what we got, and we can move forward. And I can get your house done faster. You've already made these decisions, and that's the reason I can guarantee the price that I'm guaranteeing you, because we've already come up with these decisions in advance.
Yeah,
And-
yeah. We did it. I had a fixed price guarantee.
Yeah.
So I said my final price will be within 5% of the invoice, or the estimate rather, minus any change orders, right?
Yep.
And I never, I mean, in almost, like I said, almost 12 years, I never changed the final price of an estimate. Even if I missed something, I would just eat it. I would not go to the client and say, oh, I forgot this. I need to charge you an extra $1,000, right? But I made sure, like you were talking about, having that contingency in there.
Mhm.
So later on, once I learned, you know, how to charge more and stuff, it just made things so much easier. And so, like, again, like the $300,
Right.
nobody wants to have like 15 change orders on a job, right? So like you just eliminate, you know, 3/4 of them, because, you know, like I said, 75% of the time you got to fix the
It's
flooring.
going to happen. Yeah.
You just put, and here's another thing. Look, most people bid on best case scenario. When they estimate a job, they're estimating best case scenario all the time. A lot of them are even estimating based on what they can do it in. Like, I can do this in 8 hours. Well, your employees are not going to do it in 8 hours. I can guarantee you that, because they're not going to work as hard as you.
Yeah.
Right. So like estimating, you got to take into consideration the, you know, the production rates of your employees. And then you got to take into consideration all these little things that happen. And if you just bake that into your price, you don't have to go to your client every other day. We got another problem. We got another problem. Because even if it's their legitimate problems, it's going to make it look like you don't know what you're doing.
And it's going to put a sour taste in their mouth, whether it's legitimate, don't get me wrong, like you said, but put yourself in their shoes. If you're always coming with your hand out, I mean, it's no fun. It's like your kid coming every day and needing, wanting this and wanting that. And I thought I just talked about this yesterday. What else do you need to get from me today?
It's you know, charging $25,000 and not doing any is better than charging $20,000 and then doing $5,000 with the change orders, right? Because it's the same price.
Yeah.
But when you sell it for 20 grand, they're expecting it to be 20 grand. And then you go and like another 500, another 2,000, another 3,000, and it just adds up and adds up. And they're like, man, you know, now I know why they say you need to save 10%, you know, for your, it's like, well, that's usually because contractors either way, they don't know what they're doing, or two, they're doing the low price game and then the change order, screw you later game, right?
Well, there's a contractor years ago had a boat, and he named it change order.
I think I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I want to tell you, and actually, you mentioned 75% of the time. Well, the other part of the best part is that 25% of the time you're going to recoup. You're going to get $300.
Yeah, you make extra money.
Yeah. And then my dad was a banker, and he hated change orders as a banker because it's more paperwork for him. It's not, and he's got to report to people. He's got to report to the government, and the government's what's got him out of it. He goes, I got to retire. I can't handle all those changes. Irritating. But the point being is that everybody wants to know the number, move forward. So it's not only just the customer, but it's the people they have to report to, like the bankers, that if we make a good, nice transition for everybody, not only that customer going to refer you on, those bankers, I got bankers referring me on. And those are benefits that you just really can't do by nickel and diming people.
Right. It never wins to try and nickel and dime or like be as cheap as possible. And I get it. I understand the mentality of like, I need to get this, I need to sell this job. I need to put food on the table. Let me do it as cheap as I can. You know, I understand that mentality, but it just never works out in the end, right? Like trying to do stuff super cheap never works out in the end. I made a video on TikTok, and this was the premise was, stop being nice to your customers and be a professional. Right? A lot of guys are good-hearted people. They're also people pleasers. So they want the customer to like them, and they want to make the customer happy. And so they believe that the way you do that is by being, quote, nice and doing a bunch of free stuff or doing it super cheap. Stop doing that. Like, be a professional. They're hiring you because you're supposed to be a professional. Then act like one, right? Don't be a nice guy, because nice guys always finish last.
I was thinking be a leader, be a mentor, because people hire us to be contractors because they don't know what they're doing. And I got a lot of people like, well, I want to be my own contractor. Great. Go right at it. I'll build you a frame and you do the rest. That's no problem. And then they find out that they can't, and that's okay. Those are the types of people you learn. I want to give you, while we wrap up here, I want to give you a chance to talk about Hammer and Grind, your podcast, and who people listen to, and if you do a little plug for that, if you would.
Yeah, Hammer and Grind podcast. That we started that in 2020, I think 21. Started in 21. Initially, I had I have a business partner. We were doing a podcast together, and then after the end of the year, he kind of said, "I don't want to do this anymore." So that I kept doing it, and that allowed me to actually start doing some coaching full time. But the podcast is, most of it is like solo cast for me talking, but in the last couple of years, I started doing interviews as well.
Yeah.
And so I try to bring on experts. I try to bring on different points of view and different types of things they can consider. But it's just, it's kind of a passion project. I think we're on, I don't even know, I think we're on like 260 something episodes now. So I've been doing it for almost 5 years. I've only missed 2 weeks in 5 years as far as recording an episode.
Yeah.
And so, it's anything construction. It's, a lot of it's me talking about all my mistakes that I made, again, being the poster child. And so, it's the Hammer and Grind podcast. It's on Spotify, all the podcasting platforms. We also record a video, so it's on YouTube if you want to watch the video side of it. But you can check out the Hammer and Grind podcast.
Awesome. We'll put those links in the bottom of the show notes. And one last thing, you're an author, is that right?
I wrote a book a couple years ago called The Contractor Profit Blueprint. How to boost your profits and reclaim your freedom in 4 proven steps. And so this is kind of the blueprint, if you will, that I teach my clients, and how to make more money, how to do marketing, sales, leadership, systems. All of that's kind of in this book, and I want to give it away free for your listeners. So we'll create a coupon code that they can use to get the ebook for free. And I think we said we'll use the coupon code Hard Hat. Does that work?
Yeah, that works out great. Thank you very much for that.
Yep.
Now, we're going to close up today. This has been very effective. I hope hearing the same things from a different voice is kind of sucking in that I'm just not blowing smoke. And I know that Brad's not blowing smoke. We've experienced it. We've done it ourselves. We've made those mistakes. So take heed and go out and get out of that hard hat and become your CEO of your business. Brad, thank you for your time today.